Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we sift through the noise to bring you the signal. Today, we're plunging into a sector that's, well, it's foundational to pretty much every modern healthcare system on the planet: surgical and infection control devices. When you think about the quiet but absolutely critical stuff behind every successful surgery or every safe hospital stay, even just the basic hygiene preventing illness. These devices are kind of the unsung heroes. We're talking sterile gloves, advanced surgical tools, disinfectants, even the air filtration in operating rooms, all totally indispensable. We've got some fascinating insights here from Global Surgical and Infection Control Devices Market Forecasts 2021-2033 by Cognitive Market Research. Our mission today, to pull out the key nuggets, give you a shortcut to understanding this really crucial industry. So the big picture, this market isn't just vital, it's huge, and it's growing fast. Back in 2021, we're talking global sales revenue around, $24.5 billion. But here's where it gets really interesting. Projections show it soaring past $31 billion by 2025, and then hitting a staggering $50.3 billion by 2033. That's a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of 6.2% over that whole period.
Yeah, and what's really illuminating about those numbers is that they aren't just figures on a page. They directly reflect these, profound shifts happening in global health. We're seeing aging populations in many places, which naturally means more surgeries. At the same time, you've got this expanding middle class and emerging economies, leading to greater access, higher expectations for quality health care. And critically, there's this heightened awareness, this persistent need for really robust infection prevention, especially, post-pandemic. These tools are necessities now, not luxuries. So if you connect that to the bigger picture, it just underlines how tied this market's growth is to overall healthcare progress globally.
Absolutely. So today we're going to navigate this landscape region by region. We'll look at the established players, pinpoint some surprising growth hotspots, places quietly making waves, and explore the emerging powerhouses. We want to give you a really clear, concise understanding of where this crucial market is headed and, importantly, why. Okay, let's kick things off with the established giants, and that really means starting with North America. This region, well, it dominates the market, no question. From just over $9 billion in sales in 2021, it's projected to nearly double to almost $18 billion by 2033. That's maintaining a really solid CGR of just over 6%.
Right. Dominant is the word.
And as you'd expect, the United States is the main engine here. It accounts for the lion's share, moving from about $7.4 billion in 2021 up to over $14 billion by 2033. Canada also shows strong, consistent growth, expected to more than double its market size to over $2 billion.
Steady performers, both of them.
But tucked inside North America, we find a real standout: Mexico. Now, its overall market size is smaller, sure, but its projected growth rate significantly higher. We're talking an almost 8% CAGR, expected to more than double from $690 million in 2021 to over $1.6 billion by 2033. That's a really accelerated pace compared to the US and Canada. So from your perspective, what's fueling that kind of surge in Mexico?
That's a great point. And Mexico's trajectory is fascinating. The main drivers seem to be a couple things working together. Firstly, there's expanding medical tourism, particularly from the U.S., patients seeking more affordable but still high-quality procedures. That directly fuels demand for advanced devices. And secondly, at the same time, there's been significant investment, both government and private, in upgrading healthcare infrastructure, building new hospitals, modernizing older ones. So it's not just more patients, it's a healthcare sector that's rapidly professionalizing, adopting new tech, new standards, especially in the big cities.
Interesting. Okay, shifting our gaze across the Atlantic now, let's dig into Europe, a region with, deep-seated healthcare infrastructure, but maybe a slightly different growth story. Europe collectively had sales of almost $6.9 billion in 2021, projected to nearly double to $13.6 billion by 2033, with a CAGR just under 6%. So substantial, definitely, but a bit slower than North America's overall rate.
Yeah, so a slightly different pace. Still very significant, though.
Looking at individual countries, Germany remains a powerhouse, expected to grow from nearly $1.5 billion to over $2.8 billion. The UK also shows notable energy with a CAGR over 6.8%, and France shows steady expansion, growing towards $1.6 billion plus.
Solid growth in those key markets.
But, not all of Europe is moving at the same speed. We see more, let's say, measured rates in highly developed economies like Switzerland and Luxembourg. Their CAGRs are down in the low 4% range. But then, in stark contrast, this rest of Europe segment, which covered a whole bunch of other nations, shows a surprisingly strong CAGR of over 7%. That really highlights a fascinating split. So what does this variance tell us about the European market dynamic?
That contrast is really key to understanding Europe, actually. In those more mature, maybe saturated markets like Switzerland or Luxembourg, the healthcare systems are already incredibly well equipped. Growth there tends to be driven more by, incremental innovation, replacing older devices with newer ones. It's not so much about building brand new facilities from scratch.
Right, upgrades rather than expansion.
Exactly. Whereas the vigorous growth in the rest of Europe often reflects countries actively modernizing. They're expanding access, integrating into broader European frameworks. A lot of these might be Eastern and Southern European nations playing catch-up, investing heavily in new hospitals, new clinics. That naturally creates huge demand for these kinds of devices. So it points to this ongoing convergence of healthcare standards across the continent, just happening at different speeds.
Makes sense. Okay, now let's turn our attention to the Asia-Pacific region. This is a true powerhouse, showing really impressive momentum, looks poised for even bigger things. From about $5.7 billion in 2021, this market's projected to more than double, to over $12.4 billion by 2033. That's an overall CAGR of 6.6%. This isn't just growth, it feels like acceleration. It speaks volumes about the region's economic and demographic shifts.
Absolutely, a really dynamic region.
China, of course, is a dominant force here, expected to generate nearly $6 billion in sales by 2033. Japan also continues to be a significant player, growing towards that $2 billion mark.
Key anchors in the region, definitely.
But here's where it gets really captivating, I think. India is singled out as one of the fastest growing markets globally, projected to expand from around $736 million in 2021 to almost $1.8 billion by 2033. That's a phenomenal CGR of over 7.5%, just incredible. Beyond that, we see South Korea and Australia also posting strong, steady growth rates in the low to mid 6% range. What's making India such a runaway success in this particular sector?
India's growth is phenomenal, and it's really driven by a perfect storm of factors. First, you've got its massive and rapidly growing population. Couple that with rising disposable incomes, and you just have a bigger pool of people seeking modern healthcare. Second, there's been a huge increase in investment, both public and private, in healthcare infrastructure. Think new super specialty hospitals in cities, but also better primary care facilities. Government initiatives pushing for universal coverage play a part too. And third, India is really emerging as a hub for medical tourism and pharma manufacturing. That indirectly boosts demand for high-quality devices. So it's a market growing not just in volume, but also sophistication, adopting advanced techniques and protocols faster and faster.
Fascinating combination of factors. Okay, let's move south now to South America. This market's also on a clear upward path, from around $1.1 billion in 2021, estimated to reach over $2.1 billion by 2033. That's a CAGR of almost 5.8%. Brazil comfortably leads the charge here, projected to surpass $1 billion by 2033, with a CAGR just over 6%. Colombia also showing a healthy growth rate, nearly 6.5%.
Solid growth in those leading economies.
However, just like in Europe, we see a split. The rest of South America's segment shows notably slower growth, a CAGR just under 3.6%. That's quite a contrast to Brazil and Colombia. What does this divergence tell us about maybe differing priorities or economic conditions within the continent?
Well, this variance in South America really points to uneven development and different national priorities. Brazil and Colombia, for instance, they've seen more consistent economic growth lately, and crucially, significant investment in expanding healthcare, both public and private. Think national health programs or a booming private insurance sector driving demand. The slower growth in the rest of South America probably reflects a mix of things. Perhaps lower per capita healthcare spending, maybe more fragmented systems, or even periods of economic instability that just limit investment in medical infrastructure. It's a reminder that even within one continent, market dynamics can vary wildly based on policy and, well, economic stability.
Right, context is everything. Okay, next up, the Middle East. This is a region showing very robust expansion in this market. Revenue grew from just under $955 million in 2021, pulling over projected $2.1 billion by 2033. That's an impressive overall CGR of 6.8%. Looking at the top performers, Saudi Arabia leads the pack strong CAGR, almost 7.5%. The UAE follows closely, 7.28% CDR. Qatar also shows healthy growth, nearly 7% CAGR. These numbers really stand out. What's driving such consistent high growth across these specific Middle Eastern economies?
Yeah, that consistent high growth, particularly in the GCC nations like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, it's directly linked to these really ambitious national development plans. Take Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. It heavily emphasizes diversifying the economy and significantly upgrading healthcare. That means massive infrastructure projects, building state-of-the-art hospitals, attracting top medical talent. Similarly, the UAE's focus on becoming a global hub for medical tourism, combined with its high-income population, just fuels demand for the latest and greatest medical devices. These governments, well, they have the capital to invest in advanced tech, and they're actively prioritizing world-class healthcare. That translates directly into a booming market for these surgical and infection control products.
Makes perfect sense. And as we've seen elsewhere, there's a contrast. The rest of the Middle East segment shows slower growth of 4.3% CAGR, again highlighting that even within high-growth regions, disparities exist.
Exactly. It's never uniform.
Okay, finally, let's look at Africa, a continent poised for truly significant growth in this sector. From about $856 million in 2021, it's projected to increase dramatically to over $2.1 billion by 2033. That boasts an impressive overall CR of nearly 7%. Nigeria is a significant contributor here, its market segment growing from around $284 million to over $728 million. But it's South Africa that really jumps out. It recorded one of the strongest growth rates overall in the entire report, a CAGR of 7.7%, projected to reach over $1 billion by 2033.
Wow, 7.7% is remarkable.
It really is, a nearly 8% growth rate in South Africa. What does this robust growth in Nigeria and especially South Africa mean for the broader healthcare picture on the continent?
Well, the figures for Nigeria and South Africa are incredibly significant. They really point to a pivotal moment for healthcare in Africa. In South Africa, you have a well-established, though unequal, healthcare system that's undergoing modernization and expansion. There's a growing private sector, increased investment in medical tech. That high growth rate could indicate a strong push to address critical needs managing high burdens of disease, both infectious and non-communicable, which requires extensive surgical and infection control capabilities. For Nigeria, its huge population and improving economic outlook are driving demand. There's significant investment happening, public health initiatives, private sector expansion, addressing that long-standing need for better facilities and devices. These figures aren't just about market expansion. They represent fundamental improvements in access and quality, and that will have a profound long-term impact on public health, economic development across these key nations.
Absolutely profound implications. And
Yeah.
for contrast, again, the rest of Africa segment shows a CAGR of 4.47%, underscoring those varying speeds of development across the vast continent.
So after our deep dive through all those numbers, the regions, the stories behind them, what are the big takeaways for you, our listener, to remember? This dive really shows us a global market in constant dynamic motion, driven by this fascinating mix of demographics, economic development, and policy choices.
Yeah, what's truly striking is that clear trend of steady, robust expansion globally. But, like we saw, with two distinct speeds. You have the established markets, US, Germany, Japan, providing stable, significant growth for mature systems. But then you see much faster growth, sometimes even double-digit, in emerging economies. Think India, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Nigeria, South Africa. This dynamic interplay, it isn't just about market size changing. It suggests a world where access to advanced surgical and infection control is becoming more widespread, maybe more equitable. It represents both real global health progress and, of course, significant economic opportunities for innovation and investment in the years ahead.
And there you have it, a comprehensive look at the global surgical and infection control devices market, all unpacked just for you. It's a field absolutely vital to our collective well-being, constantly evolving, and as we've seen, growing impressively around the globe with some really exciting new hotspots emerging.
Which does raise an important question, maybe something for you to consider. As these markets expand globally, especially in these fast-developing regions that have unique health challenges, unique resource constraints, how might innovation in medical device technology shift? How might it adapt to address the specific needs, the specific challenges of these diverse populations, who we see more, localized, perhaps more affordable, or context-specific solutions start to emerge?
That's a really powerful thought to ponder as you go about your day. Thanks so much for joining us on The Deep Dive.